Hello,
Hello, London calling.
how are you?
Hi, Irene. Oh my God,
So far
another week,
away.
but we are speaking in a different language today. What's happening here?
Yeah, and we are in two different countries for
Exactly.
the first time.
Love challenges. Can we comment that this is today is not Podemos Comentar, is can we comment?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so
Okay,
actually, Podemos Comentar means can we comment in
can
English.
we comment?
And it's a sentence that Nacho loves to use whenever we're talking in Spanish. So that's why we decided to name the program like that. So
And here
funny.
we are. Oh my God, Irene. A lot of people were waiting for this to happen. I remember when we started the first season, a lot of our friends were saying, but when are you going to do Podemos Comentar in English? We want to, follow you, understand all the things that you are saying. And we were saying, yeah, we'll come eventually, we'll come. We finished the
Yeah.
first season and there was no problem in English.
Yeah.
But this second season has been so special. Every single week there's something new with either a drag star, an artist, and now we are running this program in English.
I think and today is a very special program because this is a topic that is more linked to the purpose of our program, which is diversity and inclusion. When Nacho and I started this program, we really wanted to give visibility to those normal things we don't really talk about in our daily basis, because maybe they are not fancy to discuss on social media or not trendy enough. And yeah, I think diversity and inclusion is something that I'm so looking forward to discussing, because yeah, before we can speak up for it, we need to like speak about it, right? So everyone
Exactly.
knows what they're talking about.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very special program talking about the core of this season, as you said. And actually, I'm very excited as well because we are going to have not only one special guest, but two special guests tonight. Sonali and Van. In a few minutes, they will join us in this room and to talk about diversity and inclusion because they are our gurus tonight to enlighten us about these two big words that fortunately every day they are getting more and more important.
Hmm. Yeah, and as you know, guys, we never choose guests randomly here, always with a purpose. And Van and Sonali, every time we've talked to them, we really got this amazing sensation. You're talking to someone that is trying to make every space comfortable for everyone, and that is, to me at least, the deepest meaning of inclusion. And also because the other day I was watching a video and they said inclusion begins by I can make a change. I can make an environment more inclusive for someone, and it takes just one person. And to me, yeah, Van and Sonali are that person, and I look forward to learning a lot from their experiences today.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. Yeah, I mean, actually, so far the other two programs that we did, they were amazing. I think I've been watching, the videos with Aida, Dra Vulcano, and Alex so many
Mm.
times. Like you, Irene, you have been so good at, catching those quotes and sharing on all the other posts. So these programs always gives us big opinions, big quotes, big thoughts that we can think about for the rest of the week. And I think they are
Mhm.
useful for now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
so
start.
how are you? By the way, I think we are you ready? How's the week? How did the week start for you? Good.
Good. Intense.
It's Monday. You can start in another way, but
Yours good?
um,
Yours
yeah,
good?
yeah, mine good. Yeah. Tomorrow we'll fly back to London, so back to. Yeah, I was going to say the rain, but in Madrid it rained a lot this weekend, so yeah,
Yeah. Here it's okay.
like a lot. I brought the rain to Spain.
Who?
Everyone accusing me for that. Okay. Oh my God, Claudia's here for the first time.
Sorry?
Claudia.
Hi,
Yeah.
Claudia. Hello. I
All right.
love it.
So let's invite Van and Sonali to the big room then.
Oh, Claudia. How
Hi,
cute.
Sonali. Hi, Van.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to
Hi.
Podemos
Hello.
Comentar.
Yeah, thank you.
How are
Thank
you
you.
guys?
Good.
So very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
How are
Yeah.
Thank you
you?
so much for having us.
No,
So
no.
excited for your first English program. Very inclusive of you.
Let's see how it goes. But we are delighted to have you both of you here tonight. I think it's going to be amazing. We are really looking forward to hear all the things that you will share with you guys about these two big words, big two concepts, diversity and inclusion. We are very, very excited.
Thank you for having us. That's amazing.
Anytime.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. So
Anytime.
let's start from the beginning. And I think it would be great, Irene, if they, Sonali and Van, can introduce themselves. So, Sonali, if you want to start, for example,
Sure.
what is
I'm
yours?
Sonali Silva. I am in London at the moment, but I am from Sri Lanka, and my work with diversity and inclusion, I think, began just as my identity is very tied to that. I grew up in the Middle East in Bahrain. I went to school in a Catholic school in a Muslim country while I was Buddhist. So already I was living in a very diverse environment. And then when I moved back to Sri Lanka, I started working in abortion rights and sexual reproductive health rights. So I tried to bring in diversity and inclusion into that space, the right space. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Van, over to you.
Thank you. I'm Van. I'm also from London right now. So I met Irene here in London. This is why I'm here actually. And I grew up in Réunion Island, which is a French island in the Indian Ocean, where there is a lot of diverse cultures and diverse ethnies also, because the island, the population of the island is really mixed itself. I will talk about this later, I guess. And so this is where actually I grew up with people in my family and also at school that were from different background, different culture, different skin color, different religions. So I went to school with people from that were Muslim, that was Indian, that was also Chinese and practicing Buddhism. So all of this was while growing up.
Mhm.
And then I left the island also. I was 20, so I went to the UK for the first time 10 years ago already, for a year. And then I went to France. So I lived also during 8 years in France. And I'm also part of the LGBT community. So this is also why diversity and inclusion is very important for me. And yeah, just having grown up in this background, and this is also why it's important for me.
Mhm. Thank you so much, guys.
Such a great CV.
Mm.
So I think
Mm.
after the introduction, Irene, maybe we can go deeper into these two concepts. Probably a lot of people that might watching us now, maybe later, they don't have a clear idea about maybe what diversity and inclusion means, what are the differences, and you know, having like quick idea or better understanding of those words. So maybe Sonali, if you could give us, for example, your meaning of the concept that you have about diversity. What is diversity? What does diversity mean for you?
um, okay, yeah, I know there's a lot of words in this space, and I
I
think
know. I'm throwing
that's
like
why,
a bomb now.
yeah, that's why it makes it difficult for people to like begin work or engaging in their personal lives with this because it's just so overwhelming, the
Yeah.
terminology.
Mm.
But just to say, to add value to why in learning the terminology and understanding is important, I think, because it's not that like we're creating something new. We're finding ways to describe the human experience that is already quite diverse. But before having the term for it, it's difficult for us to like communicate with each other about these lived realities. So it's not that we're coming up with new terms. We're coming up with new terms, but for already existing experiences. That's why I think like, yes, I'm so glad that we have a little space to talk about the terms. I think they're really important. So diversity, it comes. a easy way to understand it is, observable and non-observable characteristics of a group. Just all the different sorts of variations, whether you can see them or they're not something observable. And I think actually Van mentioned a really nice definition about diversity in the chat. If you wanted to add to the definition of diversity, I think you were much more eloquent.
Yeah, I guess so. For me, diversity is just accepting all the difference of everyone, because we're all different and we're all human. And the only thing that we are all human, we are all the same. At the very beginning, we're all the same. We have a skeleton, we have a heart, we have blood in our body. And then all the rest is just different. So, and this is what is diversity at the very beginning. I guess this is my, what I think about this. But then the definition I shared in the chat that was diversity is more about like everything which is linked to race, gender, sexual orientation, the age also. It's also a criteria that's just we need to think about this, because and then I don't remember.
I think it was personality as well, right?
Yeah, personality.
Yeah. I think like inclusion, it's different from diversity. It's an act of including, whereas diversity is sort of like
I agree. So I think inclusion is making space for people to be part of the space, like creating the space and making sure everyone has their place where we are or where we go.
I think there's a step 2 to that. I love, like, Van and I are so on the same wavelength.
You see, guys,
I love it.
Step 1, yeah, definitely creating that space, but then also to look at it as removing barriers that are, blocking opportunities for people. So both of those go hand in hand. I think that's inclusion.
Because you can put a lot of different people together in the same room, but at the same time, you need to work.
You need to, it's one of the examples that sometimes I use is that, you can create a space, but how are you going to make sure that someone has the ability to sit there or the ability to express their point of view at that table? That's different, conversation. Those two things.
I think there is something very nice that you guys have said, because your two definitions of diversity are connected. Because Sonali, you say it's something that has already existed, of course. And then Van was saying about acceptance. And I think when you finally accept something, you put into words and you give it the visibility and the space it deserves, is when it finally becomes a reality, no? So yeah, I think your two definitions are very linked together, and it was very nice. Very nice to see it.
I remember when we were having our pre-interview the last weekend, because when I've been always thinking about diversity, I was thinking about the differences, right? We said that people are different, but as you said, I think, Van, you mentioned about personality, right? And that sometimes must be hard, because obviously we can realize about the visible differences, but those differences that are not visible must be very hard. So I'm just thinking about when, for example, you want to foster inclusion in a company or in an environment with people, with diverse people, but those differences are not visible. How can you develop that inclusion in the team? And that's something that I've always been figuring out. Like, obviously, when you realize about those differences, you might have like a kind of action plan to improve the inclusion in that team. But when those differences are not visible, how can you make them visible so you can raise awareness about that and foster the inclusion in the team or create that inclusion?
I guess that in a company, the company itself needs to make space for everyone and make everyone able to interact with them. And for instance, some people will be extravagant or extroverted, and some other will be introverted. And in a meeting, for instance, not everyone will be able to talk or share their thinking during a meeting. Some people will prefer maybe to send an email. So some people will prefer to have a one-to-one with their manager or one-to-one with the person who organizes the meeting. while some other people will be totally comfortable to share everything that they have to say during this meeting in front of 20 people, for instance. So I guess the company needs to be able to create different channel for the employees to share their thoughts, their thinking. And for instance, in this case, in a meeting room, they just need to provide, I don't know, a chat or a space after the meeting to meet, or the possibility to say at the end of the meeting, if you have any thoughts or anything to add, just send me an email and I will take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
It's an example on this
It's
matter.
fantastic. Because obviously, if people don't speak up, sometimes it's almost impossible, right, to identify those differences. So I think it's
yeah.
You are in an environment where you feel comfortable, you feel free to speak up and raise your voice or what exactly how you feel, right? Which is the best thing.
I think if I may add something, I think active listening and presence is very important as individuals. Many times I find myself listening to my own judgmental thoughts instead of listening to the other person and ask questions and learn, like allow myself to be in a position of learning from the other person, you know? And I think this takes us to something interesting that Van and Sonali were discussing the other day, which is unconscious bias. And I was very unconscious in that moment. And I told yeah, well, I learned about some unconscious bias I had, and now I don't have anymore. And that's not true because, of course, unconscious bias I am unaware of. So maybe, guys, if you'd like to talk about
Actually,
maybe we can start what unconscious bias means, so everyone can understand what that concept.
I think
Sonali wanted.
Yeah, sorry. Before we go into like the discussion of unconscious bias, which is a human behavior, I think I just want to add to what you said, Irene, about like acceptance and why that's important and like being in the learning space, because as it's like like the default human behavior is to be fearful of things that you can't understand. So when you don't understand something, you're afraid of it or you reject it. And that's why like people, that's why there's all this hate for racism or gender identities or whatever. It's because it's difficult for a certain lived experience to understand something that they are not living. And that's it. Like it's if you're in that like learning space, you're like, okay, I'm not afraid to ask you a question about how to engage with you, or how to create space with you. That's inclusion. You're doing the work of somebody who's a diversity inclusion coordinator, and that's everyone's role. And it starts with just like not giving your mind the power to default behavior, which is I don't understand it, so I'm not going to engage with it because it doesn't make sense to me. And then if you can move past that, like the technical term in like human behavior or behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, is that you are tackling your unconscious bias because you're moving from that unconscious stage to take conscious action. That's technically that's what unconscious biases are, things that you learn from your surrounding because of how you've seen like your primary caregivers react to people of a certain race, or maybe how certain people and certain races are presented in the media. That creates an unconscious bias. Like for example, there were studies done in like the 90s where you give like kids as young as 3-4 years old a doll, and then you say pick the good and bad doll, and it's like based on skin color, one doll is darker than the other, and they will always select the darker doll as bad, and the white doll as good. So that is like unconscious bias setting in at a very young age. It's similar to like it's perpetuated in people's actions even nowadays with stereotypes, like yeah, these kinds of people can't do X, Y, and Z. Like these kinds of thoughts that you might not be aware of, that's called an unconscious bias. And it's difficult because unless somebody calls you out on it, or you like actively seek the information, how do I engage with this community, or where am I, unless you're actively doing that, how are you going to deal with an unconscious bias? So that's why it's important.
Yeah, I agree. I really love your description. I would add on to that, for instance, just some example. So unconscious bias is some of mental shortcuts that we do in our brain. It's like brain shortcuts. And for instance, when we'll talk about a pilot in the aviation, you will think about a man. You will think about a police officer, you will see a man. You will think about a nurse, you will see a woman. So it's mental shortcuts that everything is programmed in our mind. And as you said, it's about what we are used to, and it's the environment that just make us think like this. So it's just like to give some example on this also.
I love the shortcut thing. I think there is a video that explains how many million of thoughts we can have, but we are only able to process many, very little, 7 or so. So your brain creates these shortcuts, and then we put people into, I put people into boxes, no? Yeah. So interesting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
And this is why also, for instance, we get used to what we know. As Sonali says, we get used to what we know. So everything that we don't know, we are most afraid of. And this is differences. And it's actually not bad to have differences and to have different people. And this is also where people need to be aware that the differences are not bad. It's just like people are different. We are all different. We were born different. Everyone has some eyes shape on their own eyes shape, like the bird. Everything, like the skin color, the religion, everything that you are unique, and this is what makes you different from everyone.
When I'm thinking about unconscious bias, there's also another concept that comes to my mind, and it's empathy, right? Do you think, guys, empathy is needed in order to reduce that bias?
I think empathy is needed to accept something, sure, but that's, again, empathy is also like a default feeling for human beings. Like if you hear someone screaming or suffering, you're not by nature programmed to walk away, you know? You're more likely to intervene and help someone. What challenges that human nature, would be maybe an unconscious bias that, okay, even though these people are suffering, they are not like you, they are the other, so we don't help. That's how they're different. So one is like an emotion and feeling that is like human nature, and the other is a learned behavior that prevents you from your human nature. Maybe that's how those two terms are like two things are different. I think it's not, we're talking on an individual level, like, how this can be harmful in our individual spaces, but if we like zoom out into the world and education and structure and world, like the economies or employment, this has like a really, really big impact on the kinds of structures that are in place right now and how they leave out certain groups of people and how we're continuing to perpetuate, these structures of privilege, these systems of privilege. So I think maybe we can discuss, like you mentioned as well too, like you think of men as like the bosses and blah, 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 like that. That's how like unconscious bias will become like bigger and bigger and like removes a certain labor market, like women from the labor market. I think that would be how we can. I just wanted to add, like, it wouldn't just be in an individual space. Yeah.
All right, amazing.
Right. I would love to know, apart from the concepts that we are discussing, from any story that you would like to share. I know, guys, maybe for you, like, I know sometimes like, some people tend to see others as they see themselves. So in my case, I was very surprised when you were describing where you were raised, the people you were surrounded with, the different religions. Like where I grew up, we were all exactly from the same origin, 100% Spanish, same color, everyone. Like, so I was like, wow, I would love to learn more about any story that you have to share.
I think that's such a coincidence, though, right? We have very similar backgrounds,
Yeah, I
and we're
agree.
both in diversity. But I mean, you don't have to be to learn about inclusion.
So I can have some story. I can add some stuff. So when I was at school, for instance, I remember that, for instance, when there are some celebration, like when Muslims are celebrating the Ramadan, for instance, they were bringing some sweets at school. When it was Easter, we were bringing some chocolates. When it was Chinese New Year, we went also to the Chinese street in the city where I was living just to celebrate with people. So it's like everyone were sharing. It's amazing, like the way people are able also to live and share, with, even if they come from different culture and background and religion, and also don't have the same color. So everyone is living on this. But also at the same time, for instance, on the other side, on the LGBTQIA plus side, so there's not lots of information or awareness on this. So it's kind of, as we were saying earlier about the environment, about the awareness. So this is something that you don't know. So it was something, and it's still something that needs to be brought up in Réunion Island. It's about the acceptance of LGBTQIA plus, because we didn't have any visibility on this in the island. So, and it's most of it, you had the stereotypes. We come back to the unconscious bias again. So it's everything that we said earlier, just people are thinking that these people are different, and so the acceptance of the people from the community LGBTQ was more difficult, and it's still in progress, I think. And I think also this is also one of the reasons we need to talk, we need to be active and to be involved in all this action of diversity and inclusion. It's because it's for everyone. It's not only for the minorities. It's for everyone that are different. It's for people to just be respected for who they are.
Yeah, I think my example is also from my childhood. Like when I realized how harmful it can be to exclude, um, like you mentioned, Van, earlier, we're more alike than we are, different. And when I was very young, I think I just couldn't understand why some of my classmates chose to cover their hair. And that's because of an unconscious bias where I was taught, okay, yeah, that is like a symbol maybe of oppression. That's they don't really have the choice to. So I would always because I'm young, and I think this is like the thing that most adults don't do is that they don't engage in that conversation. They don't go up to their friend or whoever and say, yeah, why do you do that? Like, what is it that, why do you, let me learn about it in a respectful way, not in an imposing way. And I just asked my friend, I was like, yeah, what is it like? And then what is it about this that you find comforting, or what do you find value in it? Obviously, it had a lot of religious value to her. And secondly, it ultimately was an issue of choice. She just wanted to, like this is what she, and I can understand that. I respect that. I was someone who grew up in sort of a feminist. Oh, my mom is a feminist, so in a kind of in a space where my body, my choice was how I was raised. So I can see that even though we're quite different, we kind of print like this. The same foundation is there where we believe like it should be my choice, what I want to, who I want to be. So I think from that experience, I took away two things. I'm like, yeah, if I couldn't get past this one thing of her wearing a headscarf, I probably wouldn't be her friend. And she's a wonderful friend to this day. And the second thing would have been that's like how harmful exclusion can be. And the second thing is that it just literally took like one or two conversations about, yeah, explain to me because I don't know. So just tell me, what is the value to you? And then see, okay, if I even if at that point I didn't agree, fine. That's you have the right to live an experience that I don't necessarily understand. That's fine because I can respect that there isn't like one right way to do something or to live your life. That there isn't one right way, and I wouldn't if I were to impose my right way, I would be doing more harm. So these are like very like one experience where it kind of like explained all of inclusion for me when I was very young.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's so great. Oh, I have so many questions that like you're talking and I'm like, Nacho, do you want to ask anything? I don't want to.
No,
Nice.
while you, Sonali, and Bang were sharing those stories, obviously a lot of things come to my mind, right? Like obviously personal experiences, but also just like reflections and thoughts. This is a constant fight if you realize. So whenever you've realized that there's like a discrimination for a certain race or a certain sexual orientation, you realize that the diversity is it's massive, it's so big, and there are a lot of people impacted, suffering from that, being limited either, I don't know, in companies, cities, or even in our houses, even if we don't realize. So this makes me think about maybe we should think further every time that we are looking at a person or in an environment, and how we can make those people feel themselves, right? I'm just thinking, for example, I don't know, like moms in Spain, at least when we were kids. Usually, I don't know, for example, in my case, my mom was limited to work at home because my father, obviously, he was the man and he needed to work. So when I was a kid, I never realized about, by that time, my mom was limited and she had to give up a lot of things just because obviously the men had to be, the main figure of the house. And that happened in a lot of places, I think, in the world. And those women were very limited. Fortunately, today, that's getting better in many countries, but there's still a lot of countries where women, for example, in this case, are still there, right? So whenever we feel, I think, and this is a message, when those differences are, we think that they are done, there are still a lot of places, or even if our countries we think that that's done, there are a lot of people that are still suffering from that. And that's when, for example, when I'm thinking about LGTBI, and we think that maybe, demonstrations like every year not necessary, because obviously now we got our rights and we can marry the people that we want, at least in many countries, especially in the Western world. There are a lot of people that are still suffering from discrimination. So we need to fight for others as well, even if ourselves or our environment is fine and they're free.
I agree with that, because at one point I was also thinking the same. So why are we doing the Pride every time, everywhere, every year? And then when you think further, you just realize that, all right, maybe you are in a safe place, but in the world, there's still people that can't do this, that can't be free and can't be themselves. For instance, if we talk about LGBTQIA+, but we can also apply this to a lot of different concepts. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you obviously are better suited to speak about the LGBTQ movement, but I would envision, I think, in the women's rights, for the LGBTQ women as well, it wasn't just about like marriage equality. There's a lot of like, to do with safety, security, and the full participation of sexual orientation and gender in society, which is still not the case, right? Obviously, there's like issues with the trans community, getting into positions of power, that kind of thing. We've had these conversations naturally as well. Like it's not when there's inequality, it's never created equally. Like some people miss out more than others. And sure, in some countries now marriage is legalized, but issues of security and safety are still not. So it's really important that you still continue to go on the streets and say that I'm here and I want to live a life that is meaningful and has my full potential is lived. And that's the same for the women's rights movement. Like, sure, we are engaging more in the workforce, but we are not negotiating better salaries for ourselves. The pandemic has sent back a lot of women back home. They are doing double shifts now as caregivers and employees. They're not being compensated in that way. So it's not that like we've made small gains. It seems bigger than it is, maybe because we are more connected in the world now. Everything is in pictures and videos, and we're seeing it more than any other generation. But I wouldn't say that the risks or the opportunities have necessarily changed for these groups.
Yeah. I mean, now we have a very powerful tool, which is social media, for example. I find it really great because I think I don't remember if Sonali or Van, you said We need to let people speak. And I find that social media is the best tool for someone that maybe probably is in his or her room and he doesn't try to talk about, but he has the social media to project any of their thoughts and can be listened. People can comment and somehow feel supported, right? Because I think when we were kids, we didn't have those tools. So we couldn't either listen references, but also being heard by others, which is not only our environment. And I think social media, in that sense, is a very powerful tool that should be used in order to fight or remove all these barriers that are causing many people not to feel inclusive.
I would love to know. You talked before, Sonali, about positions of privilege. I believe I can be a privilege in many environments, and I believe you might be a privilege too in some environments. So, how do you use your power when you are a privilege for diversity and inclusion?
I love this quote that I read once that it is your obligation to be more ethical than the society you grew up in. And that's maybe one way to recognize where your positions of power are. If you feel like, actually, no, I'm struggling too, and I don't have, if you start to look at how other people in your community are living, just in your close circle as well. And if you start to see that, oh, wait, for me, especially, I'm a Sri Lankan woman that has, a British education now. I can fully participate in and see myself as a political agent if I want to. I can vote. I can do all of these things. There are women in my country that are not enjoying the same sort of civil liberties, that are not enjoying the same sort of like human rights, basically. Then it is my obligation to be more ethical than the society that I come from and speak about it. If I can't go out and help them, more often than not, I'm not that privileged to go out and help them. What I can do is then bring at least their realities to places where I'm occupying, or ensure that I pass the mic on and say, here, it's your turn to speak. I'm here. I have this space. It's your turn. So that's one way to where I identify my privilege and how I see myself using it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
So I think just to add on to this, I think some people have also some privilege and are not part of minorities, because usually when we talk about diversity and inclusion, I mean, the first big picture that you see is women, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, and disabilities also that are part of these minorities that are part of this movement, and making sure that every differences are taken into account and making sure that we are making the visibility. But if someone is not part of a minority, I think what he can do and what he should do is, first of all, being aware of these different perspectives. So this is why also I'm trying to just bring awareness. And this is what we're doing right now, just chatting, talking about the topic. It's bringing awareness to everyone. And also, then you need also to create the space for others. So when you are aware of this, you can create a space and being more inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Thank you.
Sometimes I think we don't realize how differences make organizations better, makes countries better, makes cultures even also better. Sometimes we don't realize about the power that diversity has and all the things that can bring up to us.
So just something I'm thinking right now. Sorry, Nacho. It's you just made me think about this right now. It's we don't realize how difficult it is for someone who grew up with a difference, and for someone who has been excluded, for instance, as Sonali was saying, like when you grow up and your kids just push your friends push you apart, or you're just short in the school, everyone is pointing at you, saying, "Oh, look at him, look at him." It's like, it's your differences, and it's something that you should be accepted for being who you are, but actually it's just like create also some, I mean, you've heard it and you're growing up like feeling excluded and feeling bad and not wanting to be yourself and also trying to hide everything also more and more. And I guess some people who are privileged, let's come back to what we were saying again, don't see and don't realize how it is difficult for those people in the minorities. And I guess everyone knows someone part of a minority, which is a Black, LGBT, or person with disabilities, for instance. So I guess you should go and talk with those person, ask them, how was it? Was it difficult? Was it easy? How was your childhood? And all of this, just because we need to talk with those people.
And also those differences are something to be proud of. And I mean, in my case, as gay person, I was feeling that until the time that I didn't accept myself, I was not proud of my difference. And now I'm extremely proud of that, and actually I feel privileged of belonging to such a great minority or community, whatever we want to call it. And I think that feeling is something that a lot of people should realize with any of the differences they have. Differences is something, being different or whatever you have and makes you different, because we are humans and we are not the same each other. It's an amazing thing that we have to be proud of and also show off to the world. And the thing for me, for example, it helped me a lot to be part of a community, and I think communities are a great thing. I think this is a concept that usually, at least in companies, they come up for this from the States. At least being in a group of people with similarities, and also people that even if they don't have those attributes or those traits, they help you. I think the concept is the ally, right? And that is amazing, because you feel part of something. You feel like your differences are something actually that other people are sharing with you, and you can do something together with them. And that helped me a lot to accept myself and be part of anywhere, right? I don't know, guys, if you
Amazing.
have that experience as well, or as an ally or as a member of a community or minority.
Maybe
I
you
think-
want to say something. Oh, sorry, go, Sonali.
I just wanted to say, yeah, I think a lot of people also struggle with like imposter syndrome. You know, when you feel like I don't actually deserve to be here, that I'm just here because I'm a minority group or whatever it is. I think if there's someone in the audience that is actually going through a difference like that and a struggle like that, diversity and inclusion programs, whether they're in like education or employment, they don't make you smaller. Those are there because the systems that we created of privilege, they were made to exclude you by design. They excluded you. So now we are trying to infiltrate it. So of course you absolutely deserve to be there. And it starts with you, like Nacho said. It's such a beautiful story. Thank you for like sharing that. It starts with like embracing your own differences, then recognizing, using that as a privilege. Then I've like saying, okay, I have a difference. I'm embracing it. That is my privilege. I can accept it. I can embrace it. And then tackle the systems of privilege with that sort of like confidence. I think that would be like, it's beautiful, right? Really, really powerful message from Nacho. Yeah.
Yeah, I think fortunately more and more people have that that feeling, and that's why I was talking about social media, because now you can get a lot of references, right? Not about your own friends, but maybe people that you admire, like either singers, actors, or even politicians, right? That at some point, or even for example, football players. There was a football player, I think this week, that just came out from as a gay person, and that is amazing, because it's another step, or will make other people's steps much easier, right? And
I think even going back to individuals, I notice sometimes with the little people in my family, little persons, I think they feel sometimes being, like clumsy just because they dropped something to the floor and they are tagged with you are clumsy, or you are very creative, so you are going to be the person that doesn't focus, and this tags, since we are children also, and you don't need to belong to any minority, you are already being put in a box, right?
Yeah.
This way. So I think going back to what Van and Sonali were saying, ask questions, really educate. Whenever they ask me a question about something, like, I don't know, anything. Auntie, is it bad if I no, it's not bad, it's just you, and it's not even you, it's a behavior you had once. That doesn't define you, and it's not bad. It's just something neutral.
Oh, you sound like a great aunt. Like, you're doing a good job.
Just because they are great nephews and nieces. Wow, this is being super inspiring, honestly.
But there's a very positive message on that, and it's like either you can have unconscious bias. There's always room to improve, right, and fight for that. But it's something that you need to do you by yourself, right? You need to have the courage to ask questions to others, maybe challenge your own thoughts or the things that you have learned since you're a kid, because it's fine. I think it's fine, having that, but it's something that you must work on, and it's
Yeah.
a day-to-day work that all we have to do. I think the fact that we are doing this program is amazing for the people that we can listen to us eventually, and they can learn and they can apply that knowledge to their own lives, and having more and more content like this, I think it's amazing. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. It's amazing. I mean, it's also bringing the different perspective. It's just being okay with what you have and being okay to accept people opinion. And even if you don't agree with what they are saying, you might say, all right, so my point of view is this, and I agree with your point of view, or I agree with your perspective. I mean, I agree that I have my perspective and that you have a different perspective. And just being respectful of other people's opinion and perspective is it's just like we don't need to fight everyone. We just need to, we're all here just to live, and we're not here to fight and have differences. So yeah.
Great. I noted some things down. I really liked when someone said using your differences as a privilege and also fight for others. Yeah, it's a gift on a Monday evening, this program. Thank you guys so much. To wrap up, is there anything else, any story, any example you'd like to share?
Nothing that really comes to mind, but maybe to add that you don't necessarily have to ask people. Like Nacho said, you can even look online if there's something that's that you don't know how to engage with, learn, and that doesn't necessarily have to be from other people. And I completely agree with Van that it can't be imposing. It's 2021. We can't think that there's one right way to do something. There's multiple right ways to get to the same goal, and we are more alike than we are, different. And that's really like the message that I want to say. And yeah, just overcome fear of new things, of differences by learning. That's inclusion.
Yes, I agree. And also being inclusive requires effort. So it's not something that just is here and you're doing it. You need to be involved in it. You need to be intentional, and you need to give it time and the intention just being here. So it needs to come from a will from you.
So I think it's at least it helped me a lot to leave my own comfort area, and for example, traveling, helps me a lot to realize about differences. I don't know, for example, this is something that I think Irene and Van and me, we discussed the other day, but for example, the Black community, for example, in Spain, it's very reduced, or at least it was very reduced when we were kids. And the fact that you are trying, for example, to city like London with a bigger Black community, and you can have the chance to interact with them and know about them, makes you to reduce this bias, and also be aware of differences that you didn't see before, and you were just following stereotypes or what your culture and your environment was telling you to think about them. So people, if you can, travel, meet others, don't stay in your environments. Your friends will be your friends, but there are a lot of people, like very nice people, that deserve to be met as well, and know about their differences, because sometimes you never know what the difference that a person has until you talk to them, right?
Yeah. There's this quote that says, hang out with people of different ages and travel, blah, blah. I don't know. It's all about diversity. It's really cute. And it's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
This is where we learn the most, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is why London is fantastic, because you learn a lot. You see people from the world, from different regions, from different culture, from everywhere, and like you're learning a lot with meeting these people.
Absolutely. London is just a city where everything and anyone is possible, and I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Definitely.
I'll never leave London.
Also, I think another, before finishing, another message to give to the people that can listen to us is, if they want to, if they have any questions after the show, after watching this program, feel free to ask any of us. I think Sonalia and Van, you can agree with me on this.
Yeah.
Ask, feel free to, meaning we are here to help. When I don't know, I would be very, very happy if someone comes to me and he's telling me about his fears or his thoughts about telling something about him or her to others, and I could help on that. I think it would be amazing. I think we are here for that, and if we can, make people's lives better, why not?
Amazing.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want Nacho to give an appetizer of next week, or we keep it as a surprise? Surprise? Nacho never.
No, we want to know.
Nacho never likes to give hints, and I love hints.
You can give it, Irene.
I'll put it stories later. And I hope you guys enjoyed the first program in English. Let's see. I guess we'll have more others in English coming soon. And thank you so much, Sonali. And
thank you for having us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Sonali. Bye-bye.
See you next week.
Bye.